Hi, I'm Jamie Roth. Welcome to Intuitive Encounters Conversations, and today we are talking about embodiment. It has become a very popular word, especially in healing spaces, and I'm not sure that everybody really understands what it is because it is a practice, it is an experience, it is something you actively do. So I want to explain about it today. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with a dictionary definition that I think really nails it in some degree. So we'll start there. So embodiment means it represents a quality or idea in a physical form. For example, a person can be seen as the embodiment of a particular virtue or concept, such as kindness or bravery. And I think that's a beautiful definition. You know, people who really emanate that energy of that which they are. Like, you know, when someone's just a kind person, everybody knows that's a kind person, that's a helpful person, that's a genuine person, or that's an angry person. Kind of like what your reputation precedes you. That's because you embody something and people sense it, feel it, they hear it, they know it in your actions. Those are forms of embodiment for sure. The embodiment I'm talking about today, though, includes that. It includes your virtues for sure, but it's also about when it's talked about in healing spaces and you need to embody the experience or the feeling, the emotion, or the memory that's surfacing. And so what is that and how do we do that? So to me, embodiment in the healing space means something has surfaced, something is bubbling up. There is a memory, there is an experience, there's a sensation, or there's even present tense stuff that's arising. And typically we don't like to embody things when they're of a more difficult, challenging nature. So I'm going to use those examples first and foremost. So let's say you're dealing with, a memory came up, a childhood experience, or you experienced something last week with your partner or a coworker or a boss or a friend that was just unsettling. It hurt your feelings in some way and it triggered some responses. Like physically you started to feel off, maybe extra tired, maybe you're eating more or you're eating less, and you just kind of like go with those symptoms per se, but you do things to stifle any of the actual emotions, or you go into your mind and you start to really deeply ruminate about the experience, about the person, about what was said, and you get really locked in on that. That's a big part of, that's like the opposite of embodiment, when you just stay locked in your mind in that rumination. So part of embodiment is dropping what's in here down into here to see where you feel it physically and how you feel it emotionally. But let me back up and say, so embodiment means you don't numb out, okay? So you start to feel that discomfort and you're ruminating, you're having those thoughts go around and you're starting to feel stress and it's starting to come out in how you eat and how you drink, but then you start to try to numb out. You start to take more, THC, you start to drink, you start to eat, you start to over-exercise or work more often to avoid feeling the things that your body wants you to feel and your emotions want to show up as. So embodiment is dropping in and allowing yourself to express those feelings. An example of this that I'm dealing with currently is I'm about to host a really large virtual summit called the Freedom Era Summit. And while I'm very excited about it, I do have some trepidation. I do have some nervousness about it. I do sometimes get a moment of imposter syndrome of like, will this be as successful as I want it to be, as I need it to be, as it can be? And so one day I came into my healing studio and I was going to get to work on one of the pieces of the summit, and I instantly felt anxious in my body. I felt it in my stomach, kind of like rocks, heaviness, that sort of anxiety in my stomach. And mentally, I started going to some of that like imposter syndrome stuff. But I stopped myself and I said, I need to feel this and see it through, and I need to allow the energy to move through me. So instead, what I chose to do was turn on some music and allow myself to express my body to express itself through movement. And there was no performance about the movement. I just moved however I felt like it. And by the end of a couple of minutes of doing it, I was smiling. I felt more free. You could see my movements had changed. Like they were pretty fluid to begin with, but then there were more open arms and I got a smile on my face and there was more of a looseness about me instead of just a held in stress. And while I was moving, I allowed myself to feel any emotions that were arising, those difficult emotions that told me I'm not enough, I can't be successful, it's not going to happen, whatever they are, wherever they come from, and allowed that energy to just flow and move through me. After my movement session, I sat for a while and I lit a candle and I breathed and I allowed more of the emotion to come up. And it came up more in a sense of fear rather than a physical emotion of like tears or anything. It was more just a hardness. And so I worked with some affirmations to tell myself, you've got this. You've done these big things before. You know how to do these things. You are well liked. You are beloved. People, want your offerings. Because this is what business owners have to do. This is what people who put themselves out to the world, creators and things like that, we have to do. We have to remind ourselves that we can do it. So that's just a personal example of me that I'm currently have been experiencing and how I have to take myself to embody the situation. After I had moved the energy, after I had allowed myself to hear the loud thoughts, but then to, move them into, once I moved the energy, I was able to move those thoughts into a more positive reframe and remind myself of how much I'd already accomplished in my business, but much less with the summit. I've already moved mountains to create this summit. Like, it's almost done. I'm rounding the corner. It's about to go live and it's going to be fabulous. And I gave myself a pat on the back and I made myself a cup of coffee and I just honored myself and I celebrated myself for a minute. And then I got to work from a whole different frame of mind. Whereas if I had come in and just sat down with that hardness at the computer, that stress, I don't think I would create it in the same way, right? Like, you can't create beauty out of hardness and fear and scarcity mindset. You have to create out of joy and inspiration. Let me back up. That's not entirely true. Sometimes we absolutely do create out of our darkest spaces. Let me make that clear. Sometimes we absolutely do create and do things through our darkest moments, and that's what brings us back to the light. But for me in the summit, I'm not in a dark space. I'm not dealing with some loss or grief that I need to use my art, my creation to move through. So for me in this moment, I need to keep reminding myself of the inspiration of it and the joy of it and the why of it and create from that space. So I hope you understood the difference, because it takes all kinds and it takes all experiences, and they're all welcome. So again, embodiment is allowing yourself to feel the difficult things. One of the things that I do with clients is sacred anger ceremonies. So they come in and most of the time why would someone sign up for that is because most people are not comfortable allowing themselves to feel anger. Usually anger has been used against them in negative, harmful, hurtful ways, physically, mentally, emotionally, financially, spiritually. I mean, abuse of all sorts comes through anger. And so I work with women who have typically been abused a lot, or anger has been used against them when they were being parented as a child, and they grew up to try to avoid anger, not want to participate in anger, feel very uncomfortable in anger. It scares them. They don't ever want to align with other people who have used anger against them. So it's a big choice. It's a very intentional and brave and courageous choice to come to do a sacred anger ceremony. And what that entails is we start with breath work, and I allow a woman to gently go into the space. We don't just start screaming and yelling and shrieking and punching the table. We start with breath. You get to lie down on the table and you just start with some breathing. And then we bring up some of those hard thoughts a little bit at a time, and we quicken the breath, and the music I use quickens the pace of the energy. And maybe it might be a little bit of a harder drumming type of thing instead of soothing massage music, right? And then with that breath, it opens up into that anger, and I remind them to go into that thing that they're mad about currently, or the many things. And then once you pop that open, then we can begin pounding our fist and being mad and growling and shrieking and yelling. And we always do it when no one else is around. So we have this space completely to ourselves, and I join in so that they don't feel watched or intimidated to express themselves so boldly. And once they go in, it is a beautiful thing to watch. It is beautiful to watch women embrace that sacred anger that is there for a reason. It has a voice, it has a reason, it has a message or many, and it wants to be heard. It wants to be felt, that hotness, that lava, that burning, that fire. And once they start expressing it, they just start to get free with it. I mean, women will just jump off the table and jump up and down and pound their fists on the table. That is embodiment. And I know it probably sounds very intimidating if you're on the other side of this video going, yeah, I would never do that. That sounds embarrassing. I get it. And that's why it takes, women a while to come to that ceremony, to come to that session and sign up for it. It takes a lot of courage to do that. Then we bring it back down though. So then there's the embodiment of like, we cool the system back down and we breathe energetically out of that space. And we remind ourselves of the safety that we're in, the sacred space that we're in my healing studio in that moment, in the life they're currently creating. And that they can feel anger on many levels going forward. It doesn't have to just be in this large, huge way in ceremony with me. You know, they can begin to express themselves in anger, because anger is valid just as any other emotion is. It is just as important. And it can be done in very productive and powerful ways that are not necessarily harmful to other people, but create boundaries, create protection, create change for your life, for other people's, right? So once they come out of it, they're usually more clear-eyed. They feel looser all over in their body. They come to realize how locked up they were in anger, and when they weren't embodying it, instead they were using other coping skills, again, usually numbing out in some way, avoidance. But once they realized that they could let that energy move through them, they sleep better that night. It opens up a whole new world. So that's one powerful example of embodiment. But it can also be more simple in that you just become more allowing of yourself to feel physically and feel emotionally and answer that call. So let's say you're at home, and so you're in a private space, even like no one's there. Okay. So you're just alone. It's private. You're in your own safe space, and you get a text, an email, a phone call, something that triggers something in you that just immediately, I don't know, pisses you off or makes you sad, reminds you of some hard thing. It makes you feel some kind of way. Well, you have a couple options. One is to just go on about your day and be like, oh, well, you know, there's nothing I can do about it, or do your normal, like, well, I'm just going to start cleaning instead of dealing with this, or I'm going to jump in the car and go somewhere and go get a coffee to avoid it, whatever. Or you can say, you know, be looking at this text, looking at this email, or get off the phone and be like, okay, I'm feeling some kind of way. I'm definitely feeling some kind of way. What is the way I'm feeling? And the best way for me to do it, the way I do, is always to put my hands on my body. That draws myself into my physical space right away. Because if I'm just like, how do I feel? How do I feel? My eyes are open and I'm looking around. I'm like, oh, there's the grocery list. You know, my mind can just get distracted. But embodiment means pause. It means you take a sacred pause and you bring yourself into the physical space first. So again, for me, it means touching my body, bringing myself in and going, okay, I'm in my body. I'm someone that needs to close my eyes a lot because I get distracted by visual experiences. Some people like their eyes wide open all the time. So you do you figure out what works for you. But I do encourage you to put your hands on yourself, to bring yourself into your physical space. I like to close my eyes. I like to get that connected breath where there's no break between the inhale and the exhale. And I like to breathe and then just to kind of get centered. And then I start asking questions of my body, like, what am I feeling? What am I feeling? And I do my best to get quiet, to sense what I'm feeling, to name the physical sensation and the emotion. So whatever comes up for you, like you can do like a body scan, like, okay, I would encourage that. Touch yourself, close your eyes, start breathing, and then do a body scan, meaning check in with your shoulders where you go, oh God, like all of a sudden you realize you're going like this, you know what I mean? You didn't even realize it. So then maybe you could take a couple of breaths to kind of like relax, or roll your shoulders up and back. That's a good form of working with embodiment, is recognizing where there's tension, where there's stress, where there's chaotic feelings, where there's discomfort. Maybe it's a numb sensation. A lot of people like to numb out. And when you start checking with your body and getting into embodied spaces, you become more aware of how numb you are in certain spaces. Like it's almost like it's devoid of energy, and you can feel that. You can feel that numbness. So you can begin to work with that, like where the tension is, okay, like try to move your body a little bit. And then you want to identify what's the feeling, what's the emotional feeling with it. So, okay, I'm feeling tension in my shoulders. Oh, that is tension, it's stress, and the emotional feeling is fear. And it's a fear that I'm not going to get this done. This, whatever I just got a text about reminding me to do this, you know, from my coworker at work. Now I'm all stressed out because I'm realizing I have a million things to do, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, I can't do it. And so then you start to work with the narrative as well. So feel the physical, notice where it is in your body, try to feel what the emotion is. And this is a practice, right? You're not going to figure out how to do this out of a 20-minute video or however long this is going to be. This takes practice, especially if you're not used to being embodied. So I'm just trying to give you some tips and tricks and tools on how to practice embodiment and what it means. So you're going to have to explore this more often. You're going to have to make it a habit, a routine, a lifestyle. That's what embodiment means, is truly living in the physical, the mind, the body, and the spirit, and allowing all of it to come forward and being authentic in its expression. How you feel it physically, how you express it physically, how you verbalize it, how you hear it mentally, and then how you spiritually, energetically handle it. So you're going to feel the physical. You're going to try to identify the emotion that comes with it. And remember, there's a vast array of emotions. It's not just happy, mad, or sad. If you go Google emotions, you'll come up with lists of hundreds of words that you probably didn't even realize were emotions. And so that's another good thing to do, is to start playing with that, like Google the list of emotions, so that you can start to realize the whole gamut of emotional experiences there are, like embarrassment, disappointment. There's so many. There's exuberance. Like, these are all feelings. And I know I'm talking a lot about like harder ones, more maybe what you might conceive as like negative ones. But I said that earlier in the video because that's tend to be what we deal with in healing spaces, right? But also peace can be very hard for people to understand and deal with and embody. Rest, which isn't necessarily a physical or an emotion, but it is a physical sense. People always feel like they need to keep moving and be productive. Our worth is tied up in moving, and not just physically moving, but being productive in some way, our output. And so resting is can be difficult to feel. If you've lived in a very chaotic life, it can be hard to feel safe when things are slow and steady and stable. So embodiment, can mean anything. It doesn't just mean the ones we typically think of as difficult, like anger or grief or things like that. It can be excitement. Not all people are comfortable in joy. I've had clients tell me that they actually fear joy more than they fear difficulty, chaos, anger, because they're used to all those things. What they're not used to is feeling joy. Joy doesn't feel safe. So you might need to explore the embodiment of joy. You might be overjoyed one day. Maybe life is nailing it. Like something came through that you were wishing for, manifesting for, actively trying for, seeking, and it landed. It happened. And now you're like, oh my gosh, here it is. And it's amazing. And that feels good for a moment until it doesn't. Then you're like, how do I hold this? What do I do with this feeling? I don't know this feeling. And then you go sabotage it, right? You somehow make it negative. You somehow discharge it into something, not positive, because you are not comfortable embodying joy. So let's talk about that for a minute. How do you embody more of the what we would perceive as positive emotions and feelings? So that would look like being silly. That would look like dancing freely and being joyful and just like dancing around, putting on flowy clothes that feel good on your body and just loosen up your energy. Anything constricting, like I love yoga pants and all, but honestly, we should be wearing, women should be wearing more dresses and stuff like that. And that doesn't come from a weird modesty thing. It comes from, modesty is not necessarily weird for everybody. But just to be free flowing and allow energy to flow through our legs and around our legs and up our body. But you do you and wear what's comfortable for you. But embodying joy means to go in and go, oh my gosh, I feel open in my body. I feel free. I feel loose. And then dancing and shrieking and laughing and putting on playful music or a comedy movie that you just want to laugh more, or calling someone and sharing that joy. That's a big one I really want to offer you, is calling someone and sharing that. We're very good at calling our loved ones, our besties, and people we are close to, and being like, oh, life is hard, and getting their, support. And that's beautiful and wonderful and great. And I hope you have that. We're not as good about sharing our joy because we feel like it's gloating, or we're told it's not humble. And I encourage you to do that as a form of embodiment. I only keep friendships with me that I can also share in my joys, and they can share in theirs. They can share in their wins. We can support each other in that. So embodiment isn't just the negative, hard things. It can also be the big, exciting, wonderful things, the wins, the things we want coming to fruition. Overall, I hope that your takeaway is that embodiment is about authentic expression as you receive it and perceive it, as you feel it in your body physically, and allow yourself to feel it and then explore it and release that energy, allow it to move through you instead of staying locked in. Embodiment is your authentic expression of the emotion of it, instead of being non-emotional because I don't know, it's not cool to have emotions, or you're uncomfortable in emotions, or other people are uncomfortable in emotions. Instead, you let them go. You just let them be, and you find the people in your life that can hold that for you. They can hold that without trying to squash you or tell you, that their discomfort goes over your experience. Like, you want the people in your life who will be like, cry, sister, or like, yeah, I want to dance and shriek with you, or let's be mad, let's go to the smash room and break shit together. Those are the kind of people you want. Embodiment is then about the energetic expression, which means allowing it to move through your body, because energy and emotions are always supposed to be fluid and moving. And when they don't, that's when we get stuck. That's when we become withdrawn. That's when our body starts to show it. We're clenched, we're tight, we hold ourselves, we look down. When we are a free form of expression, our body naturally opens with expansion. Our heart space, our emotional center naturally opens to give and to receive. So it is a practice. It's probably one you're not used to. And maybe this is the first you're even really hearing about it, or you're hearing a more in-depth explanation. So don't think you're just gonna know how to do it right away, because it's probably going to be uncomfortable. So that's okay. And you get to just explore it and practice it. Like, that's what you get to do as a human being. That's the human experience, body, mind, spirit. And you get to practice and explore and grow and evolve and change and decide what works for you and decide what doesn't work for you. So I encourage you to go on and be your most authentic form of expression, of embodiment of who you are as a human being, and share that with the world, because we need that, especially now more than ever. We need authenticity now, and we need full expression now. And that's the light we need to be shining on one another and for one another, and holding space with one another to be so. That's what makes the world go round. That's what makes the world beautiful. That's what makes the human experience worthwhile on this beautiful planet. Thank you so much for joining me at Intuitive Encounters Conversations. If you'd like to check out any of my services, please check my website, www.intuitiveencounters.com. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.